So let's use Bridge to browse some of our documents. And Bridge is a great tool that comes with every version of Photoshop, and you simply go to File, Browse in Bridge. This is a separate application that allows you to browse and navigate and organize the files in your system, but it has some real great advantages over your OS's file manager. In this folder, we can see a whole bunch of images, and it's not obvious at first because they're all showing up and easy to look at. But we've got JPEG files in here, we have Photoshop documents, and we also have Illustrator files. And it may not be obvious at this point because you haven't worked with a lot of these file types, but generally you can't get a preview of what they look like when you're just browsing with them in the Finder. As a matter of fact, let me illustrate that. You can right-click on any document and then find its location on the computer by choosing this Reveal In option. And it's Reveal in Explorer on the PC. I believe it's Reveal in Finder on the Mac. When we click it, it's going to open in the OS my folder that I was just looking at. And we can see that this looks a lot different than Bridge just showed. In Bridge, we see previews of all of these files. Here we can see what BB Card 1 looks like and what BB Card 2 looks like and what BB Card 3 looks like. But when I'm browsing in my system, I can't. I don't know what they look like. I don't get these awesome previews. That's one of the main advantages of Bridge. Another great feature of Bridge is that it's very helpful with metadata. And so we're going to look at this really quick with these files, and then we'll switch to the file that you guys have access to, and you can look at it and follow along with me. But check this out. We can see all of this information about the document, when it was created, when it was last modified. We can see the dimensions in inches, the resolution, a lot of information here that's hidden. And a lot of this is fairly easy to get to in the Finder with this Photoshop document, but let's look at one of these Illustrator files. Oh, it looks kind of the same, right? We've got the file name and when it was last created and modified and all that, but look what happens when we scroll down. Look at all of this information we get. This image would need 4 plates to print, and here are all of the swatches that are in the document, right? Really powerful information. Now, that's kind of not something that we really use. We're not going to talk about Illustrator in this book, but let's look at our sample file and see what we can gain from the metadata there. So I'm going to go down to my Pictures folder, click on Photoshop, and Chapter 4, I've already unzipped my file, and I'm going to click on this gh-johnbase.cr2. And this weird extension is that it's a RAW file. This happens to be the extension they use in Canon cameras. I think that Nikon cameras use NEF, maybe, and some will also just say RAW. But the real beauty of a RAW file is its power. So we're going to talk about a couple things in just a second. We're going to see how to develop this image. But look over here on the right. Notice this area? It shows me the settings that were used on the camera when this photo was taken. That's pretty cool. But as we scroll down, there's even more. Look at all of these options here. Right? Notice this copyright notice. A real great use of metadata is to store copyright information because it doesn't show up on the picture, but it is still visible in the file when we look at the metadata. It's kind of like writing your name on the back of the photo, on a print photo or a print piece of art. You can sign the back of it. It doesn't destroy the composition and the image itself, but at the same time, you still have your copyright notice on there. So these can also be edited. Within Bridge, it's a great tool for editing metadata. So I can put in my copyright notice. This is a drop-down where I can just choose. I can say, well, I'm going to release this to the public domain. And here's right usage terms. And I can say, well, this image is released under a very specific Creative Commons license. So there's a lot of different ways. And to find out more about those licensing terms, there's more info on that on Chapter 10. But let's scroll down a little bit more because there's some really cool stuff in the metadata. I can see all of the settings for my camera. How cool is this? I shot it at an f-stop of 1.8. It's a 50mm lens. I can see that the flash didn't fire. My metering mode is a spot metering mode, which of course I can see a lot of that here, right? There's my spot metering mode. Here is my f-stop. Here is my shutter speed. Here's the ISO that I shot at. But check this out down here at the bottom. It even has the body serial number of my camera. So if my camera is lost or stolen, There are actually websites where I can register my serial number, and then if images start popping up after I've reported it stolen, it'll email me and say, hey, there's some images taken with your camera that just started showing up on the internet. You might want to look into that, and maybe I can track down my camera that way. Now, as we dig down further, check this out. There's also GPS settings. My camera doesn't have GPS built in, but your phones do. And so keep that in mind also, that you can also reveal information here that you might not want to reveal. If you're posting images that you've taken with your phone, this GPS could be showing the location that those images were taken. And in certain circumstances, obviously you would want that to remain secret and private. So you can modify it again by just kind of clicking here. And if I did have info in there, I can click on it and delete that info. So as you can see, metadata is a very powerful way to keep track of information on your files. It doesn't mess with the way the image looks because it's not visible until you actually use something like Bridge or reveal the information on the file using your system, but it's very non-intrusive. You don't see that information unless you're looking for it. Metadata is a great way to store copyright info in digital images, and as you've seen also, great way to sort of dissect images that you see online. If I see a photo taken online that's really gorgeous, sometimes I'll go in and I'll bring it into Bridge just to look at the settings that were used. I'm like, how did they get that really cool effect? And I can see exactly what they did when they set up their camera for that shot to get that very particular look. And I made some settings so when I click out of the area, you're going to see that I get this window. Do I want to change the metadata information? I don't need to make the changes because I was just sort of playing around. So I'm going to tell it not to apply those changes. And now to open this image, I'm going to just right click on the image and tell it place in Photoshop. And what that'll do is open up Camera Raw to allow me to process this image and bring it into Photoshop. We'll examine this in depth in the next video.